2 million women in this country are being subjected to violence at the hands of a man every year. But that figure is thought to be a huge underrepresentation of the reality because, of course, so many crimes don't ever get reported.
Police chiefs have described it as a national emergency, while misogynist social media influencers are being accused of helping to turn young boys into abusers. Joining us is Assistant Commissioner for the Metropolitan Police, Louisa Rolfe. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us this morning. I mean, it seems like we're at crisis points. This is increasing, and the shocking levels that we're hearing that are already around at the moment means that women don't feel safe on the streets. What kind of world are we living in at the moment?
So I think there's so much we can do, and our report sets out the scale. It sets out how policing is responding to this and how we're taking it incredibly seriously, working harder than ever to improve our response, dealing with this in the way that we deal with issues of terrorism and other significant threats, ensuring that we have a police response that is capable, that officers are trained, and that we work with victims, but we're very suspect focused. But the reason we want to get this information out there is that actually this is the tip of the iceberg, and policing must deal with perpetrators effectively, but others must work with us too, because this happens with young people and so many perpetrators. The growing group of perpetrators are people under the age of 18, and policing is not the best solution for those people.
OK, so what are the measures that you're taking then to crack down on this?
So we're working with the College of Policing to ensure that we have a national centre for public protection. We've been working on a number of areas like rape and sexual offences, increasing arrests for rape by more than a quarter over the last year. Operation Soteria, which was a brilliant piece of work with academics, looking at how officers can respond more effectively to victims, increase prosecutions, bring more offenders to justice. But offences like domestic abuse, we've been working with the Crown Prosecution Service to improve prosecutions, and we're working with many brilliant charities who support women and girls every day across the UK.
We were discussing this at the beginning of the show, Louisa, and the consensus really was, and many of the viewers agree with this, the consensus is that the problem in terms of the increase in these figures, a shocking increase in 2024. It's extraordinary we should be talking like this, talking about a national emergency. It seems to be the internet. On two levels. You've got these misogynistic websites, which increasingly young men and schoolboys are looking at, and it's perverting the way they think about women. And you've got the easy access to extreme porn, where women are treated unbelievably badly in vision. And that is what's beginning to change the way that as men grow up from boys into men is affecting the way that they view women. It's the internet which is poisoning them. Would you agree with that? And if you do, what are we going to do about that?
Well, I think there are things we can do with big tech companies who run social media and internet sites. This is about ensuring that we take every step we can to remove that access to harmful material. There's a lot of research, as you say, that proves that young people exposed to extreme pornography are then, you know, they are desensitized to the harm, and their views around, you know, the acceptability of harmful behaviour will change. So we know there's more that people can do. The big social media companies, things like age verification, and we know that there's legislation around online harms, but actually we'd like it to go further. We'd like internet companies and social media companies to take more active steps to prevent this content ever getting out there, and when it's identified, to remove it really swiftly.
Do you think you should be cracking down harder on the so-called gateway offences? We know now that men who commit rape and murder women very often have a track record of what are seen as smaller crimes, i.e. flashing, stalking, abusing in one way, shape or form, and they move on. It's almost they're prepping for the larger crimes they commit. So do you think we should be cracking down a lot harder on these so-called gateway crimes?
I think we should absolutely be understanding people's escalating behaviour. And there's a whole range of offences identified as violence against women and girls. And we have to be careful not to criminalise, for example, young people involved in experimentation, for example, sharing sexual images that and we have a great approach to dealing with that. But you are absolutely right. We must be better at identifying escalating predatory behaviour. There are too many cases, and I know you're talking with a victim's family today, where there are steps that could be taken to identify those cases sooner and to take really robust action. And our training focuses a lot on that. Operation Soteria was very clear. People's offending is rarely a one-off.
No, I mean, we saw that within just a couple of cases, didn't we, of police officers that have been found guilty of offences. I'm thinking of Wayne Couzens, of David Carrick, and they had had previous crimes, previous incidents of behaviour that hadn't been dealt with. When you look at those in particular, and we know, you know, there is an issue with a certain amount of predators within the police force itself, that has to affect people's trust when they go to a police officer to report something like this, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, and we've worked incredibly hard to ensure that those individuals are identified as quickly as possible. And you'll have seen we're very open about this, and whilst the report today doesn't focus as much on that, that's because we are very transparent about the action we are taking to root out people who should never be wearing this uniform or be in the police service. Our training absolutely focuses on officers having empathy with victims, understanding the dynamics of abuse, and there is a sad reality that abusers are attracted to professions like policing, but policing is not alone. And the scale of this, with 1 in 20 men in the UK as perpetrators, policing is not the only profession, but our actions speak louder than words. And you'll have seen in our data just in the Met alone, 27% increase in the people that we have dismissed from the service. But we're also working with our workforce, the vast majority who come to work, who really care and work incredibly hard every day to deal with perpetrator behaviour, to support victims of crime. So it makes us all really sad, and police officers hate nothing more than someone who lets down our service.
It's interesting, you know, just talking to you and putting these questions to you and your answers just illustrates how huge this problem is and how big and entangled it's become in our culture. And of course, the elephant in the room, we talk about cracking down on these gateway crimes, which obviously means stiffer sentences when these guys are caught. There's no room for them in the jails. And if they get sentences below a certain level, they won't be sent to jail. That's a big issue, isn't it? Actually punishing them. If we can't send people to jail, we can't punish them.
Well, I think that's why this report is really important, because, of course, policing must target those harmful perpetrators where the solution is to keep the public safe by sending them to jail. But absolutely, you know, this report also sets out there are many, many opportunities to intervene and deal with that offending behaviour. The fastest group of offenders and victims of these crimes are young people. 50% of child sexual abuse and exploitation offences occur between young people. Locking them up is not the answer there. We need to work with others. Stalking is another great example, where in London we have a partnership with the Susie Lamplugh Trust, a brilliant charity who works so hard to support victims of stalking, but also health. The NHS in London work with us and clinical psychologists on intervening and stopping that offending behaviour. There is so much more that we can do as a society to work together to, you know, this is so large, it requires a seismic change in our approach in society to how we tackle it. And policing has part of the answer, and we are not shying away from that.
Sorry to interrupt, just before we let you go, I just want to know what your advice is to women. You know, if we're talking to our daughters about how they should look after themselves, are they safe on the streets? Are they able to walk the streets on their own? What do we tell them?
So when you look at our data, the vast majority of these offences are not happening as stranger attacks on the streets. They are sadly happening behind closed doors in homes. 30% of rape and sexual offences occur within a relationship. Domestic abuse is by far the largest group of offending behaviour. Many victims know their stalker. So actually this is often about friends and family supporting victims, asking the question, you know, being alert to abusers can be incredibly charming, manipulative people who will often isolate a victim. So be really alive to that. But also this needs to be called out at a much earlier age. In schools, I'd like every GP, health visitor, teacher, not only to recognise this behaviour, but to know what they can do when they feel somebody is as a victim, and ensure that we have a really comprehensive joined-up approach across government and across society to tackling this.
Well, good luck. As we say, it's an enormous enormous problem. We are going to be joined in a few minutes by Louisa Squire. Her daughter Libby, of course, was raped and murdered after being kidnapped when she was walking home after our night out in 2019.
Now, the levels of violent crime towards women and girls is being declared a national emergency, with nearly 3,000 offences reported every single day, according to a new report. Louisa Squire's daughter Libby was murdered whilst walking home from a club in Hull back in 2019. Now, she says that change needs to happen now and the onus shouldn't be on women. Louisa Squire joins us this morning. Good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us. We've been speaking earlier to the Assistant Commissioner for the Met Police, Louisa Rolfe, to get her take on it. I know in your mind that we should be very much looking at the men and boys here and working out what to do to stop that offending.
Absolutely. Rather than saying to our girls, keep yourself safe and don't get raped, we need to be saying to boys, keep girls safe and don't rape.
Because of what happened to your lovely Libby, 5 years ago now?
5.5 years.
5 years ago. Here we are now, today, telling people that there are 3,000 women being violently attacked every single day in this country. And you've been immersed in this subject since what happened to Libby. What's your take on it? What do you think is happening to young men in the UK now, which is turning them against women?
If I knew that, I could fix the problem. I think there's a lot of influences on social media. There's, the whole bravado thing between boys. I've got a son who's 16, and it's that he's not been brought up that way. He doesn't behave that way. So maybe education starts at home and in schools. And when these boys show these,
images,
whenever they show any sort of tendencies towards violence against women and girls, we need to call them out. So if they are speaking in bad ways or what have you, we need to call them out.
So it's interesting. You agree with the broad consensus, which I think we've established on today's programme, that one of the roots of the problem is the internet. It is social media.
I think so.
And pornography.
Yeah, most definitely.
And that's poisoning growing boys' thoughts about women.
Absolutely, yeah. And, their brains aren't,
they're not
formed enough to understand these things. So I think, that has a big part to play in it.
Something else we were talking about is the understanding of those sort of initial crimes that then go on to lead to the bigger crimes. And I know that this is something with Libby that you became aware of as well, didn't you? Those sort of crimes, maybe the voyeurism, the exposing themselves, things like that. What happened in Libby's case?
The man that ended up taking Libby's life, he had a long history of voyeurism, lewd behaviour in public, following girls home, exposing himself in the streets, all that sort of thing.
Going back years?
Going back years. And
how had he been dealt with after committing those offences?
He hadn't been caught for them. He was only apprehended for those after Libby had gone missing.
And do you think that's because people not reporting them, or is it the police maybe thinking, because it's something like voyeurism, it's not as serious as other types of crime?
Yeah. No, I think I know in his case, some of the non-contact sexual offences were reported. A lot weren't reported until after Libby had gone missing.
Right.
And the police did investigate his, previous crimes when they were reported. But, they went as far as they could go. They got DNA, but didn't know who the DNA belonged to because he'd never been caught. So, and these people are incredibly difficult to catch. And, it's...
When they are caught, again, there seems to be a broad consensus that the punishment never really seems to fit the crime, particularly with these gateway offences. They're seen as minor crimes, when in fact they're deeply serious.
Absolutely.
Would you like to see longer prison sentences?
Yes, longer prison sentences and help. So they should be forced to go to treatment services. We should try and unpick their thinking and change the way they think, and then hopefully we will protect more women and girls.
I know that you go into schools, don't you, to speak to sixth formers about Libby's story, to use what happened, to hopefully try and help others so that it doesn't happen to them. What do you say? What are your key bits of advice to others?
There's lots. But I say to them, when you go out, when you go out in the town and what have you, go out, have fun, get drunk. We've all done it, we all do it. But do it safely, do it together. Never, ever leave your friends. If you have a friend that's drunk, go home with them. Make sure they get home safely. And, and if if you are a victim of a non-contact sexual offence or one of your friends is, you know, you have to report it. You absolutely must report it. And I do find that I get really good response from the young people I speak to. They're really, which is really encouraging.
I think I know the answer to this. Well, I'll be interested in your take on it. Why do so many women of all ages find it difficult to report these crimes? Is it just pure embarrassment? Is it victim shaming? What's going on there?
I think it's a bit of both, really. I think that historically they think, oh, well, you know, am I going to be taken seriously? Are the police going to do anything about it? Am I wasting their time? Are they going to say to me, what were you doing walking down that street on your own? You know, and I think, again, we have been conditioned to accept it.
Yes.
We accept these lower level offences happening to us, and it's, you know, well, nobody was hurt. It's the whole...
And I suppose there's also, and we've seen examples of this, the worry that if they stand up in court and give evidence against their attacker or the man who flashed or whatever, they'll be questioned by his defence. And sometimes...
ordeal that might be.
That would be an ordeal, and sometimes it's an unacceptable ordeal. And we saw a defence barrister punished for the way he spoke to a victim of rape in court recently. So that must be a factor too.
Must be, massively. And they don't get long sentences. So there is that, is this really... You could take 2 or 3 years to get to court and they might get a 6-month, 8-month sentence or, you know...
Or suspended.
Or suspended, yeah. So
what did Libby's killer get?
He got 18 years for rape and a life sentence with a minimum of 27 years for the murder.
And was that enough for you?
If it was served, you know, consecutively, yes, because he would be in prison for, you know, best part of 50 years.
Yeah.
But no, it's not enough. 27 years. I mean, he was only 24 when he killed her, so he'll be, what, 51 when he's eligible for parole?
I guess that will never make up for losing your beautiful daughter,
absolutely.
Will it?
She had a whole life in front of her, and he took that. So to me, the only relevant punishment for him or sentence for him will be life imprisonment.
I completely agree with you. Because
he shouldn't get out.
What effectively we're saying when we opened the cell door in his early 50s is, oh, well, it's all right now.
Yeah. And
it's OK now.
It's OK. You can go, and, you know, and he'll do it again.
It's unacceptable.
He'll do it again.
No, I'm completely with you.
Thank you so much for coming in to talk to us about this. I imagine, you know, it's a very difficult thing for you to talk about because of the circumstances, but important nonetheless. And, you know, we hope, as you say, with your advice to people to keep reporting if anything does happen, that we can start to bring these numbers down. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much for coming in.
You're welcome. Thank you.